Good evening, all of you, and I hope all of you are having a great weekend. So, today I would like to welcome all of you for the first continuing professional development for the year 2022 2023, which is CPD organized by SLITPA Training and Development Subcommittee UAE. Today, my organizations are focusing on cloud adoption. They will face a range of new and different security challenges beyond what they might have experienced in the past. A bigger target for the data breaches and other security incidents are major threats in the cloud environment. So, proper cloud security management is a challenge for organizations. So, today we are here to understand a little bit on enterprise cloud security posture management. As a speaker for this CPD, we have Tarindu Edrisinghe with us. He was a former associate tech lead for the platform security team of WSO2 in Sri Lanka. After that, he moved to Melbourne, Australia to pursue his dream of PhD. Now he is a PhD research scholar at La Trobe University and working as a cloud security consultant for multiple companies. He is having around 10 years of industrial experience, especially in security domain. It's indeed a special privilege and a pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the SLIPTA to this CPD. Before handing over to Tarindo, I would like to specially thank you for accepting our request to conduct this CPD, regardless of the time zone, because it's a 12 midnight in Melbourne, I guess. So, kind request to all participants to mute the mic during the session. And if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself or post it in the chat. And I would like to hand over this session to Tarindu. Over to you.
Thanks for the intro, Madhurika, and good evening to everybody. So let's get started with today's topic, enterprise cloud security posture management. Right. So let me give you a brief introduction to myself. So I'm currently studying for my PhD at La Trobe University, and also I'm a visiting lecturer for a few universities like Deakin and Monash in Australia. And I've done a couple of certifications, and I'm also an open source contributor to OWASP, Java, and Coder, and a few other projects. Cool. Right. So, so this is a brief introduction to the session that we are doing. So basically, I'm sure everybody is working with cloud now. So to have high availability, security, the overhead of maintenance of the applications and infrastructure, we all tend to migrate the systems to cloud environments, right? But then, unlike on-premise systems, now cloud, although it says it's inherently secure, unless we have the right configuration there, it might be a disaster. For example, when you migrate all your infrastructure to cloud platforms, and if you don't do the security configurations properly, let's say you might be opening your entire infrastructure to public users. So that might lead to a catastrophe where hackers would gain access, which was not a threat before because you had an on-premise system, right? So we need to make sure that we know what we are doing, we understand the best practices, we apply the best practices, and also we constantly monitor these environments and infrastructure so that we can achieve the best out of the cloud infrastructure providers, and also make sure that all our systems are secure, right? So in today's session, we'll take a look at different topics like how we provision the infrastructure, what are the best practices, what are the different tools that's out there, both the paid or proprietary systems as well as free and open source software out there that we can use and leverage to achieve security compliance. And also we'll take a look at how you can constantly monitor your cloud infrastructure to identify different threats and also alert the administrators so you can address these weaknesses or vulnerabilities in your infrastructure then and there quickly, and also how you can achieve regulatory compliance, what are the different security standards out there that you can look into. So I'd keep everything at very basic level, so I'm sure anybody would be able to understand. And if there are any questions when I'm presenting, feel free to unmute yourself and raise your questions, or else you can post them in the chat. Right. So let's move on to the first topic that we are talking today. That's cloud infrastructure provisioning, right? So that is basically how you create the cloud infrastructure, right? For example, let's say you need to create a virtual machine and then deploy your application there and make it available to a specific set of users, or specific or make it public, right? So how do you do that? So there are multiple ways of doing it, and also you need to select the cloud provider. For example, whether you want to go with Amazon Cloud or Azure or GCP or any other vendor like Alibaba Cloud. Likewise, so you need to do some research there and identify what cloud suites best that satisfied the needs you have. Right. So it might, some of the factors associated there might be the cost, the availability. For example, some of the services that you intend using might not be available to the region that you really need to work with. Maybe in that region, the Amazon or the cloud provider would not have a data center. Likewise, OS they do have the data centers and all, but they might be not yet having specific services. For example, if you are looking for Kubernetes services, some of the regions might not yet be supporting that. Likewise, so there are multiple factors like that. So you need to do your own research and find out the best cloud provider that supports your requirements. And once you identify the cloud provider, then you need to see how we are going to create the infrastructure. Maybe if it's not a very sophisticated environment, for example, let's say you just need a few resources to be created and then only few users, or it might be your internal applications that you need for your organization that you are hosting in the cloud. So in such case, maybe you can look into manually creating the infrastructure, the environment. Like you log into the console, you create the resources, you copy or copy the deployable artifacts there, then you run the infrastructure, you purchase some domain, point it to your IP address. Like this, you can do all that manually, right? So there, what we really need to evaluate is whether you want to use some standard way of provisioning, like using some infrastructure as code, or else can you quickly get it done through a manual mechanism, like you create the infrastructure, right? um, and then other factors are like how many environments that you need to manage. For example, let's say if it's a very critical system that you have, you might be in need of multiple environments. For example, dev environment, QA environment, staging, UAT, pre-prod, prod, likewise. So you may need to manage and maintain multiple environments depending on your need or your customer's need. And then what the benefits of now, let's say if you are going to create your infrastructure manually and then replicating it to multiple environments, that might be a tedious task for you. So there you need to look into optimizing this, maybe moving into infrastructure as code, right? So basically infrastructure as code is the infrastructure that you need to create. You can specify or you can define it using some templating language out there, so that you run the templates and then it would create the infrastructure. So the benefits of that is you create one environment and you can simply replicate it or make copies of the same environment. So you create the dev environment, make copies, change some parameters, and then replicate it. So you have the pre-prod, staging, prod, all the environments quickly created, right? So you need to evaluate these benefits, whether you have multiple environments to manage, of the whether you need the replicas to be there, or else it's just one environment. You can simply manually create it and manage it, right? Now, in real life, sometimes if we are dealing when we are dealing with customers, so they have so many requirements depending on the severity of these systems and the high availability requirements. So you simply cannot push patch to the production, or you cannot simply release a new feature to the production without proper testing. So you need to have exact similar replicas of production. So you test the patch or the new features, and then you have some maintenance window and push the changes to production. Or maybe you need some, let's say if you cannot afford to have a maintenance window like a downtime, then you need to look into different architecture or deployment patterns like blue-green deployments, where you have the running system that where the traffic is coming through a load balancer, and then you have another instance that has the latest patches to the feature, and then you cut down the traffic from the production to the new instance quickly, so that the users won't be seeing a downtime, right? So in that case, you need to have the session replication enabled so that persistent sessions are there when the cutover is happening, right? Now, these are some of the techniques that we use in real world to make sure our infrastructure is highly available, accessible to all the users, right? So as I mentioned, like the infrastructure code is required in case where you need to uh, basically replicate the systems or else manage the infrastructure properly. You need to have proper tracking. What's the resource? What are the resources that you have or you need to create on your cloud infrastructure wise? So when it comes to IaaS or infrastructure as code, there are various different technologies that we can use. If it is Amazon Cloud, you can use Cloud Formation templates, or if it is Azure, you can use ARM, Azure Resource Manager templates, likewise. But all Terraform is becoming increasingly popular now. So basically, Terraform has HCL HashiCorp configuration language, so where you can write your infrastructure, define your infrastructure, and then you run it through this Terraform engine. It can basically go and create your resources on cloud, and then it would maintain the state also. So when you have new changes, Terraform knows what's the existing infrastructure, and on top of that, it can apply the new changes. And then basically it has this connect architecture. Simply we call them as providers. So you write the template, and then the particular provider, let's say you have the Amazon provider, so AWS provider, the infrastructure would be created on Amazon, or you have the GCP provider, so the infrastructure would be created on Google Cloud Platform, likewise. So you define the infrastructure using a templating language like HCL from Terraform or HashiCorp, and then you execute and create your infrastructure. So this way, you don't need to manually go log into a console, create the users, or create the virtual machines. You don't need to do that. So write the code to do that. When the code gets executed, the infrastructure is created or provision, right? Now, this is a standard pattern that gives you more transparency, what exactly is running on the cloud now, what exactly you need to create, and you can maintain the versions also properly. So you know, let's say what the infrastructure looked like to yesterday, and then tomorrow you have some new changes. You change the code, deploy the new changes. So through proper version controlling, you see what are the changes applied on the cloud infrastructure, right? We are now. I'm building a story here or a use case here. So the need for the infrastructure as code, and then what are the best practices that we can apply on IAC or infrastructure as code, right? So now let's say you write a piece of code that can create cloud infrastructure, and it might be creating users, and it might be opening ports. So you have to be really careful when you're creating your infrastructure through any infrastructure as code language, right? So I would like to divide it into three different sections, like develop and distribute, deploy, and runtime. So I've listed some of the areas that we need to look into when managing security, right? So there are various IDE plugins out there. You can get help from like TF-Lint, Checkoff, Docker Linter, Docker Vulnerability Extension, Security Scan, Contrast Security, likewise. So basically, these plugins out there for your favorite IDE like Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ IDEA. So you write your code, right, for provisioning the infrastructure, and then when you're writing the code, you can get the help or support from this kind of an IDE plugin. The plugin would scan your code and give you immediate feedback. I'll show you some demos also in this session. So that way the developer gets to know how you can improve your code, right, to have the best security. And then you need to think about threat modeling also. For example, what are the different attack surfaces out there, especially when you're putting your resources on cloud, how the attacks can happen, like who has access to the different environments likewise. So you need to have a build a threat model and then identify the vulnerabilities out there, and then what are the risks. Then you need to have a proper plan to mitigate those risks. And then managing secrets is also important when it comes to infrastructure as code security. For example, you might be creating a user, and then the user needs to have a password likewise. So that's a simple example likewise. Or maybe you create some environment that needs to have some user level access. So you need to for that some credentials are required, or else you have an IAM user created on Amazon cloud, and then you use those credentials to create the provision the infrastructure. And then how you're going to maintain, where you are going to store those credentials, right? Maybe you hard coding them and pushing it to your GitHub likewise. So you need to, that's not the best practice anyway. So you need to use a vault, some secure vault that secretly or that encrypts your credentials and stores securely. And then at the runtime, whatever the tool you are using might be would be able to call your vault through an API, resolve the secrets and use it for provisioning the infrastructure. And then version controlling is required, because let's say you write your code to provision the infrastructure, and then you manage it properly. For example, you can see the changes happen over time, who did the changes, likewise. So you can give access to your specific developers only for let's say Terraform templates, so they are the ones who can deploy changes to different environments. So you can do proper access controlling also, and also over the time what kind of changes are happening on your infrastructure through the code, right? And then principle of least privilege must be followed all the time. So this there are multiple aspects of it. One is like giving access to the developers to make code changes in the code. For example, who has access to merge the code into the main or master branch. Likewise, you can manage proper access control in there. Or else, who has access to deploy changes into different environments like production, pre-production. Likewise, you can grant permissions according to the policies that you have in your organization. So you need to grant minimum permissions only for each users or different systems. And then static analysis of code is again important. So I'll do a demo later on this topic. So it can be an ID plugin, or it can be some tool that scans your code and then identifies the vulnerabilities and give you feedback. This line has a problem, you need to fix it likewise. And then open source dependency check, like you might be using different open source components. It can be, let's say you provision a virtual machine, and then it has some base operating system, and the operating system has third party libraries installed. It can be an SSH server installed, or FTP server, or an email server. Likewise, different third party software is installed in the virtual machine, right? So all those are third party open source components. So you need to have some tools scanning them and identifying the vulnerabilities. And then so contain an image scan, this is not directly related to the infrastructure, but the application running inside the let's say your Kubernetes cluster, your virtual machine, those are also important. For example, your application is built as a Docker image, and then the Docker image has different layers. Let's say it's a Python based application, so you have a base Python layer, and then Python some version is used, and then that version might be having some known vulnerabilities, right? So you need to have some tools to scan your Docker images and identify different layers, the third party components packaged into the Docker images, and then gives you a report. Okay, these images are vulnerable, so you need to upgrade the dependencies, right? So you can use a tool like Trivi from Actra Security. Those are free tools out there that does image scanning. And then again, containers also, once you run the containers in a Kubernetes cluster, right? So there are various tools, for example, one to identify the configuration, and then another one to identify runtime security. For example, there are tools like Kube Hunter, or kubescape that can scan your Kubernetes cluster configuration and give you give recommendations. And then if you're concerned on the runtime security of your Kubernetes cluster, there are tools like Falco that you can install in the cluster. That's basically a rules engine. So you can define rules where if somebody is gaining SSH access into a virtual machine, VM in your Kubernetes cluster, and execute some command, like some system command that can trigger alerts immediately. So you get to know somebody gain access to your internal cluster, right? Likewise. And then artifact signing, for example, you can use, let's say when you are making git pull requests, so let's say you need the code signing, you can enable code signing. So whoever who has the particular key, the cryptographic key, only can sign the code, and that code only will be merged to your, let's say, main branch. Likewise, so those kind of checks can be there, that you can enforce for achieving the security level of required level of security compliance or requirements, right? And then deploying, like you need to manage the infrastructure inventory properly. So let's say if you are looking into certain certifications like ISO 27001, so there it would be a requirement for you to manage an asset inventory. So basically you need to know all the assets in your organization, in your cloud environment, the list of users. Likewise, so in that case you need to properly manage your inventory, like what are the different systems that you are using, what are the different users who are having access to, what are the different resources. Likewise, and then commissioning, like when you're creating a resource, like you need to properly tag them, put descriptions like what is this resource that you're creating, who has access to that, who maintains. For example, if it's a larger organization, and then multiple resources are created in the cloud environment by different teams, anybody needs to know like who owns this particular resource. Let's say it's a virtual machine, some user creates it, and let's say that user leaves the organization, now it's running forever, nobody is worried. Like that's not the ideal case. For example, it's creating costs, it's charging you also for the resources that you're running, right? So at any given point in time, you can see what are the active resources, and you can see who owns the resource, who manages the resource, who what's the purpose of having this resource, right? Likewise, when you're creating the resources, you can define these through proper tagging. Decommissioning, that is like when you don't need certain resources. For example, for a POC or for a project that you create some resources, now you don't need them anymore, so you delete them properly, right? That's decommissioning. So you need to have a proper plan to delete them also, and also you need to make sure like only the authorized users can destroy the infrastructure or resources. And then just tagging, that as we discussed before, proper tagging needs to be there for all the resources. And then dynamic analysis is more like the runtime security. So I'll do a demo on this also, how you can constantly monitor your infrastructure, the security of it, different resources actively running there on your cloud. And then runtime security concerns like immutability of infrastructure. You create the infrastructure and then it's static, it doesn't get modified. So if you want to modify the infrastructure, then there should be a proper workflow or a pipeline that you can trigger for pushing all new changes on the infrastructure. Otherwise the infrastructure is static, so it's running. For example, a Docker image, it's a static, you run a container, nothing gets changed. um, Static. So similar to that, like your infrastructure should be static. It should be immutable. And then logging. So if somebody is making a change in the infrastructure, proper logging should be there. Who did what? Like who created this resource? Who opened this port? Likewise, you need to have a proper logging enabled on your cloud infrastructure. And then monitoring, like just because the logs are there, it doesn't work, right? So you need to integrate these logs with different systems like um, um, Splunk, so you can get the log streams and then process them in real time, and then you can build dashboards using connectors like Prometheus connectors, and then you can have real-time monitoring on your cloud. You can use the inbuilt features also, for example, Amazon's Cloud Watch alerts, Cloud Trail, those can be used. Or else you can get the log streams and integrate with third-party systems and then do the monitoring and the real-time threat detection. So let's say now you have a static infrastructure, somebody goes and opens a port which allows public traffic to your internal application or your Kubernetes cluster. So it should trigger alarms. Okay, now this port is open. So somebody should verify it whether it's really required. Likewise, so you need to have all those controls in place, right? Okay. And then let's go to a demo. So I'll be doing a
Sariju,
yeah,
Sariju, excuse me. I think there
yeah.
are some questions on the chat box. Would you like to
Okay,
take?
let's go through
Yeah,
the questions. Let me.
two questions from participant.
Okay, let me get this real quick. Okay, Rukshan is asking how sure are we cloud providers are safe to host sensitive data and well secured in global level. In many instances, data security levels being compromised every now and then. Even we have recently seen secure password vault. Yes. Okay. To be honest, nothing is secure, right? So there's nothing called like it is like 100% secure. The reason is somebody out there finds a weakness in a system and exploits it, right? So that's the problem. Now, to mitigate that, only like we need to have all these controls in place. One thing is like, let's say if it's an application level vulnerability, we need to manage it on our own unless it's a security feature provided by the infrastructure or cloud provider. But then the cloud provider themselves might be having different security critical security vulnerabilities, right? So it's their responsibility to make sure they do the right thing. But then again, there can be gaps still. So right, they have teams working on these. So as of now, like in terms of the compliance perspective, we have certifications like SOC 2. So if you want to use a cloud vendor, then you ask, okay, give, or it's publicly available most of the time, you get the SOC 2 report. So that defines like how they manage the infrastructure, who has access to your data, on which region they are hosting or storing the data. Likewise, so they have these, compliance standards that they comply with existing checklists. But the problem is still it might be not 100% secure, right? So to be honest, like nothing is secure. So there can be a 0-day vulnerability at any time. So but the thing is we are trying to minimize this attack surface, right? By leveraging the controls that these cloud providers are giving us, as well as leverage different tools out there available to us to make sure we have adequate controls in place to address these vulnerabilities. And then for VAPT testing, in your experience, which tool is best code scanning out there? Sona Cloud, Sona Cube, Veracode, what are the differences? Yes. Okay. Sona Cloud is the paid version of Sona Cube. So Sona Cube is the free version. Basically, Sona Cube or Sona Cloud, that's a code, it's a linter, right? It's just giving you code quality instructions. So they do say they scan the security of the code, but to be honest, it's not really enough. So basically, like if you have access to a Sona Cloud or Sona Cube, you can see the programming languages it supports, and then the security control. For example, I think for Java they have 300 odd security policies, but the quality checks, but those are quality checks like the indentation, the semicolon, unused variables out there. So not many are there that actually covers the security of it, right? So Sona Cloud is not really a security scanning tool, so it's a code quality tool, although they market it as a security tool. And then Veracode, um, somewhat good. um, One problem with Veracode is you need to upload the built artifact. So now when you take uh, a static code analyzer, or we call it as SAST, static code security analysis, there are two types of analysis. One that scans the binary artifact. So you need to build your application. It can be a Docker image, it can be a jar file, WoW file in Java. Likewise, you build the artifact, you have a binary and then you upload the binary to the tool, right? So Veracode does the binary analysis. So one drawback of that is, so you cannot only have the source code if it's a compiled language. For example, if it is JavaScript like React or Node.js, you can get the code, upload it, that should work with Veracode. But if it is Java or .NET C Sharp, you need to build the code, get the binaries, DLLs or JARs, whatever, then you upload. So it does the binary analysis. Uh, so all these tools are having their own predefined set of policies. So the tool just checks the policy if the policy matches or if the policy violates, right? So they have their own weaknesses and advantages. So depending on the language, you have to pick the tool, right? For example, like you can use Gartner Magic Quadrant and see who are the leaders, who are the visionaries in the static code analysis domain. So with my experience, I found checkmarks is really good compared to Veracode in some languages. But checkmarks super costly. If the companies can afford it, good. So as Veracode. Uh, Depending on the programming language also, like free tools are out there. Again, like we really cannot depend on one single tool. For I'll show you some demos here. So if you use one tool, it has its own set of policies, so it will tell you these weaknesses are there. But you use another tool, that will tell you another set of violations, right? So you cannot really rely on one single tool. You need to have multiple tools covering them. So we are trying to reduce the attack surface as much as possible by using various different tools here, because manually reviewing the code or identifying them is really not possible, because it's a repetitive and a tedious task when the systems grow larger. So you definitely need tools, and then tools also you need to evaluate them and see if it really does the achieves the coverage. And then there's another question: are we discussing security levels in artifact repositories, JFrog? What are the best practices maintaining artifacts? Okay, JFrog, it's not included today. Yeah, so that's also important. For example, when let's say when you have developers, they write code and then the applications they build needs to have so many third-party components, right, in it. Now, from where they are downloading these third-party components, right? Is it from, if it is a Java application, they can download it from Maven Central. Likewise, so from somewhere, if it is a .NET, they can download the Nugget packages from Microsoft. Likewise, so from where they are downloading these third-party or open source or third-party components, so we need to have some controls built to control it, right? Basically, yes, you can use JFrog. JFrog artifact repository to host your third-party components there, and then you can block everything else. So the developers would be downloading the third-party components only from the JFrog artifact, right? And then JFrog has something called X-ray. So once you enable X-ray, so X-ray is the tool that scans the third-party components, identifies the vulnerabilities, and tells you, okay, let's say you are using Apache HTTP client version 4.5.12, and it has these open vulnerability, right? And then vulnerabilities, they have something called a CVSS score, common vulnerability scoring system, some score that's based from 0 to 10. It's a scale. So depending on, let's say if it's a 10, that's a very catastrophic vulnerability. If it's 0, no risk at all. Likewise, so JFrog Artifactory can run this X-ray component to scan all the third-party components you are hosting there and tell you, okay, these components are vulnerable, and it's just you, okay, you need to upgrade it to this particular version, the higher version. It can suggest you, right? So using JFrog, you can block somebody downloading the particular vulnerable versions also. So that's something you can take. So JFrog has a free version also, and then paid versions are also there. I'm not going to cover that, but yes, you definitely need something like JFrog in place to make sure the third-party components are securely deployed there. So your developers are not pulling the components from here and there. They only pull the dependency from the artifactory only. And also you have proper monitoring there to see which library is vulnerable, and then which library is having the higher versions there, so that you can control it. And then there's something called SBOM, software bill of metric, as I can remember. So that is like basically at any given point in time, you need to know all the different third party components that you are using in your applications, like all the different, let's say, Docker images, the jar files, the WoW files, different components that you use in your application. You need to monitor it. So JFrog can give you reports like on the usages. So you can, so JFrog has something called Frogbot. So basically, it's like Dependabot. If you're familiar with Dependabot, so you can enable Frogbot or Dependabot on your GitHub. So whenever you are pushing code, it would scan the code and tell you, okay, you're trying to introduce these libraries to these versions, and these versions are vulnerable. So JFrog has something called Frogbot that does the same thing as Dependabot. It scans your code every time you are making a pull request and it tells you this version is vulnerable. You upgrade it to this version, right? I'm not covering it, but maybe in a future session we can talk that in detail. Yes, we definitely need that. So basically, we need to have all these different checks to have adequate security. So today we'll try to cover like the cloud related stuff only. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. And then if I'm missing it, Madrika or Chamil, just remind me, right? I hope
Sure.
I hope I addressed answered the question. So let's move on to the demo. So this is ISA infrastructure as code security tools and compliance checks, right? First, I would go to the tools and then we'll see what are the checks out there, right? Okay. Let me quickly open my demo.
Uh, Tarinder, sorry to disturb. I think Rukshan raised his hand.
Roxana, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I raised my hand. So my question is, do you recommend also to use Gitbucket and like Bitbucket, all those kind of tools which is available, or is it that we have to have our own repositories in terms of migrating the code to cloud?
Okay. So I mean, definitely it's good to have some version controlling system, either Bitbucket or GitHub, GitLab likewise, right? There's no question about that because now these platforms have one thing is proper access controlling. Who can log? You can create the teams, add the users who can access, who can view the code, which repository they can view, who can merge the changes likewise, right? So definitely need to have a version controlling system, and then you can when the benefits of having a version controlling system is you can integrate various different tools to your version controlling system. Let's say if you have GitHub, there are so many tools out there. In fact, I'll be showing you some of the tools. Every time the code gets changed, you can configure GitHub actions that would get triggered, runs various different security checks and alerts, trigger alerts likewise. So you definitely having version controlling system is really good. As well as you need to have CI/CD pipelines, and then we can see which kind of tools are to be integrated into the different states or different um, um, steps in your CI/CD pipeline, right? For example, when the code build happens, what are the tools to use? When the deployments happen, what are the codes? What are the tools to be used, right? Post deployment, runtime monitoring, or likewise. So definitely having a version controlling system is good, and then you can leverage other tools in your CI/CD pipelines to have the best level of security. Did I answer your question, Ruksha?
Yes, thanks. It rightly answered.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be showing you some of the features like that. So that would give you more insights into what we are talking about, right? Cool. Let me open the first demo today. Right. Now I'll before this I'll bring some tool. I'll explain the tool those I'm going to use here. Just give me a second. Now we were talking about Terraform, the infrastructure as code, right? So now there are different tools out there that can scan the Terraform code, like perform static code analysis, and then tell you, okay, this line of code has a problem, right? There are proprietary tools as well, and there are free tools. So I'll be showing you the free tools out there. Free tools are really good with my experience, especially these tools. So let me introduce the first tool that we are going to use. Now, this is called TFSec, Terraform Security, by the company called Aqua Security. So this can be simply integrated with your GitHub. I'll be demonstrating that. So every time you are pushing some Terraform code, it can scan the code changes and tell you what's the problem there, right? And then now let's say the other problem comes, like you don't know what to check, right? You might be right in the code, but you really don't know what's the standard out there, how to fix likewise. So the best thing is, I'll share these links also with you. So you can go to this Terraform checks, and then this is the latest version of TFSec. You can go to the checks and see, depending on your cloud environment. Now you can see here for AWS, all these Terraform related checks are there. And then they have for Azure, they have for GCP, likewise. So using Terraform, if you're provisioning your infrastructure, and if you have integrated this tool can do all these compliance checks. Let's go through few. For example, let's say you're creating a virtual machine, like an EC2 instance, and then this is one check that it performs: missing description for security group. Let's say you have a security group, then you're trying to create a security group from Terraform code, and then let's say you are missing a description, right? Let's say this is the way you write code to create a new resource, an EC2 instance. You can, oh, security group, sorry, and you can see here the description is empty, it's missing. Like, so this is the bad code, and then this is the good code, like a secure example, like this description tells you what this is, right? For example, like if you have so many different security groups, let's say for some administrator, if you go there and at a later time check which security group to use or what to change, so these descriptions are really needed there, right? Let's say you go and open a port, and then if multiple instances are referring the same security group, that will be a problem, right? So now the best thing is this tool can scan the code and tell you this line has a problem, and it gives you suggestions also. Okay, this is the correct way to fix it, right? So this is one tool out there. So likewise, there are other tools also. This is a free tool actually. So this is their GitHub repository from Aqua Security FSec. So it has all the instructions how you can integrate this and how you can run this. You can run it as a command line client. Also, you can integrate it with GitHub through a GitHub action, and then it has something called PR comment. So every time you are making a Git pull request, so it can add the comment into your pull request. Okay, this line has a problem. So I'll demonstrate that shortly. And then these are not the only tools out there. So there are other tools like TerraScan is there. So that also can do the similar thing. And then there's some company called Bridge Crew, so they have a free tool called Checkoff. Checkoff also does the similar thing, and so all these tools out there, and then the policies that they have are different. So I'll show that. So it's good to have multiple tools also integrated with your CI/CD pipelines, because you really cannot depend on a single tool, right? So this is the checkoff tools GitHub repository. So all the instructions are there how you can simply use these tools, right? Okay, now I'll show you a demo how you can um, integrate this with your GitHub repository, and then I'll do some changes and show you. So I pre-recorded the demo, so it's easy. So let me quickly play it. Right, so here I'm showing you the TFSec tool that I just showed you, and then the checkoff tool by Bridge Group, right? For scanning the Terraform code when provisioning the infrastructure. Now this happens before you actually create the environment, right? So you have some code written here, and then you are going to run Terraform later to provision the infrastructure. Right. So now I have a GitHub repository created here, and then I have a Terraform template here, and then two GitHub actions configured here. One called checkoff. So this is the GitHub action I used to integrate the checkoff tool to scan the Terraform code. So if you are not familiar, that's fine. Just this explain like really easy. You can see here when somebody is pushing the code. What it does is basically it uses this bridge crew. This is the official repository of them, and then it uses their own GitHub action. So basically, it scans the when a code change happens on this particular repository, it scans the code and tells you you have a problem. And then this is a checkoff tool, and similar to this, now all these are extracted from official references, nothing new. I mean, you also can refer the official documentation and get it integrated. Now this is the other tool, TFSec tool. Simply again, similar to checkoff, when you are making code changes in your Terraform code and you're pushing it to a particular branch, it would be scanned and it will immediately give you feedback. These checks are failing, right? So I showed you the policies, right? The 100 different policies that they have. So these tools have their own set of policies, and those would be checking against their own policies and tells you this policy is violated, right? Okay, so I have a template here. What this simply does is it's creating an AWS EC2 instance in this US West 2 region. It's a T1 micro instance, and then it has the root EBS storage, as well as I'm attaching another EBS volume to that, and then the configuration is here, right? So let's see now if when since I have those GitHub actions integrated with this repository, so every time I'm making a change here, it would trigger those actions and run the tfsec tool and the checkoff tool and tells you what is the problem, right? Okay, so now I'd edit this file and then quickly run it and show you how the tool runs, and it will tell you what the problems are, right? So I'm going to open the template file here, and then I'll make a small modification. What you don't need to change anything. I'm just adding a new line to the file and then committing the changes. So when the changes are committed, those GitHub actions are now triggered, and then you can see here it takes some time because it has to scan your code and give it needs some time to give you the feedback. Now you can see here this checkoff job is still running. The GitHub action is still running. It's performing the scanning. Right. After some time, you can see what's failing or what's passing. Now you can see the other one, the tfsec GitHub action, that tool that's already run and it's failing. You can see here the checks are failed. Now once you, yeah, other one also completed, both failed actually, right? Now these are two different tools scanning my Terraform code that I just modified, right? So if I show you the very first one, this tool reported is um, instance. It's a high critical vulnerability. Instance does not require IMDS access to require a token, right? So now when you read this, like you may have no idea what this is, right? That's fine. So you can learn it on the go, right? So basically these links are there for you to open and go to the description, the documentation, and find out what the problem is. And then it will tell you like how to fix that also. Like you basically, my point is like you don't need to know all these things. You can get the help from the tools, then learn on the go and get the things done, right? So now the second vulnerability or the third one it reported is EBS block device is not encrypted. So it highlights here this particular line. We have an EBS volume, it's not encrypted. So it highlighted here, you have a problem in this line. And if you are interested, you can go to these links and read more about it and find out how to fix that also, right? Cool, you can see here one check passed and three different checks failed. Now this is the tfsec, that tool that scanned the code. And let's check the other tool, the checkoff tool by Bridgecrow. Now you can see here what are the different, now I have the same code and then I'm using two different tools to do the scan. Now ideally I'm expecting both tools to tell me the same problems, but that's not, right? So that's another thing I want to highlight. So you really cannot depend on one single tool. So when you have multiple tools, you will find out like different tools complaining on different, there can be an overlapping as well, but sometimes one tool does better in some area, another tool does better in a different area, likewise. So this checkoff tool reports on vulnerability, ensure that detailed monitoring is enabled for EC2 instances, right? That's one problem that this one highlighted, but this was not reported by the other tool, tfsec tool, right? So I haven't enabled detailed monitoring on my instance. That's one problem that this reported. Then second one is ensure all data stored in the launch configuration or instance elastic blocks store is securely encrypted, right? Now this is somewhat similar to the what other tool reported. So that tool also reported that my EBS volume is not encrypted, right? So this is an overlapping vulnerability that I have. So it's good both tools highlighted that particular vulnerability. And then this has some other vulnerabilities. Also ensure instance metadata service 1 is not enabled. This is a new one, new vulnerability that the other tool did not complain on. And the other thing is now these tools can complain you 100 different checks, right? So you need to find out which really matters to you, whether you really need to do this. Sometimes, let's say you are enabling some configuration, it might cost you even, right? So you need to be careful with that. Just because the tool tells you this is wrong, you need to fix it. Now you need to do proper research and find out whether you really need to do it. Otherwise, you can suppress it. Like, so next time, let's say if you suppress this specific vulnerability, next time you run it, it won't be reported again, right? So those are configurable. So anyway, these are there for you to get help, right? Now this one is ensure that EC2 is EBS optimized, right? So this might not be a security vulnerability. This must be a performance problem, but still these tools have these kind of checks also that gives you like some hints or help to improve overall security of the application, right? Cool. So I simply ran these two tools, checkoff and tfsec, against the Terraform code that I have. The important thing is I still did not create this infrastructure, right? This is before I create the infrastructure, the tool is telling me you have a problem in the code. So that way I can run these tools and then get them fixed. And then if everything is good, then I would be committing the changes and creating the deploying them and then creating the infrastructure, right? Okay, now let's see, we can fix these problems. Like we can follow the documentation, the particular links are there that helps you what the problem is, how to fix that, right? So you can simply open the particular link, go there, find out what the issue is, whether you need to decide whether you need to fix it, and then see what the bad code is, the insecure code example, and then how you fix it, right? So here it suggests you, okay, you need to add this metadata option section. So you can simply copy paste it. So that's what I'm going to do now. I just copied the recommendation and I'm going to edit my code now. Likewise, so I'll check all the failures that these two tools complain to me about, and then I'll fix it. And then when I rerun, now if I have correctly done it, it should not be reporting the same issues again, right? So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm opening the reference link and then going to the particular documentation, finding out what the best practice is, and then copying the code and then fixing my bad code. Right, so this enabled the root EC2 instances root blocks encryption enabled. Now it has a secondary EBS volume mounter, so that is also now encrypted. So I fixed these vulnerabilities as per the recommendations by the tool itself. Yeah, so this is done. I already fixed it. Right, now these are the issues reported by tfsec tool. So now I can go to the checkoff tool and then find out the recommendations that they gave and then get them also fixed. And all these are public. Now, this is a free tool, right? So you can use it and it's a really good tool to use. And then, so this documentation from Bridge Crew and TFSec, all it's public. So if you are interested, you can go through, read them, understand, because let's say if you are a person who like frequently create EC2 instances or specific resources, you can read the specific set of policies and get familiar with them. So next time you fix it as and when you are coding, right? Like anyway, the point is you don't need to memorize anything. These tools are out there, use it. Get the help from the tools.
I
Cool.
got one question.
Yeah.
Before I proceed, so is it this tools are only specific for AWS instance, or can it be used for Azure as well?
Uh, it supports Azure as well, right? So I'll anyway show you like so basically the like TFSec and Checkov both tools, they support the providers like GCP, Azure, and um, AWS. So they have their own set of policies. So I'll show you anyway again. So it's not specific to a particular cloud provider. It supports all the major cloud providers. And then since these are open source tools, there are many contributors out there who constantly improve these tools. let's say you can write your own plugin to maybe do some specific scanning and then suggesting you some problems, right? For example, now this is simply doing text processing and identifying the metadata of the instance and giving you the recommendations, right? So if some specific policy is not there, you can contribute to the tool, or else you can use a custom. You can customize the tool and use it in for your own purposes as well, right? Okay, so what I just did was I modified the code following the best practices or the recommendations the both tools gave me. Now I mm, committed them, push the changes to that particular repository. Now you can see here the GitHub actions are getting triggered, so they run them now. Scans the new code now. Let's see. Okay, now the tfsec passed. Now you can see here all the checks are passing. So if you go there now, it will tell you everything is passing, no failed checks. You can see here, yes, for checks passed, no failed checks, right? And then checkoff tool is still running, scanning the code. Yeah, you can see here 7 checks passed, no failed checks, right? And then in the documentation, the bad code is there, the good code is there. So what you can simply do is try it out on your own, like by adding the some malicious code and then correcting it, right? For example, now to answer you to your question, now you can see here. Now this is TF6 documentation. You can see here these are the policies available for AWS, right? And then if you scroll down, now these are the different AWS specific resources. And then now this is Azure. See here, Azure, and then let's say if you are having Azure databases, you can see here these are the controls out there, security controls for Azure databases, right? Likewise, let's see if they have GCP. Yes, see here Google. Let's say if you have a BigQuery instance, so they have these controls for GCP and GCP compute environment. You have these policies, right? So it's not just AWS. These tools support multiple cloud providers as well, right? So these are the policies of TFSec, and then same for checkoff and no. So you can go to the bridge crews policy list and identify the recommendations similar to that. For example, and also the bad code is there, the good code is there. Simply, if I copy these and then put into my Terraform template and merge it or push it, then you can see I can basically test this out how this works. So the tool would tell me this check is failing, so I can get it fixed, right? Now what you saw was how I integrated it through GitHub Actions to give me the feedback through the workflow, right? Now I'll show you, let's say if I want more details rather than me going into the pipeline and checking it out, let's say this TFSec tool has something, a plugin called TFSec PR commenter, pull request commenter. Now I'm going to demonstrate that here. So now this is the workflow file, configuration file that I'm using for defining the GitHub action. So basically you can see here, when I'm raising a pull request, and then it's running this particular Aqua Securities, this PR comment GitHub action, and then it needs a GitHub token as well, because now this is a third party tool that's scanning the code, and then it needs to add the comment into the pull request. For adding a comment, it needs to have a permission, right? So I need to create a GitHub access token and add it into the repository, so the tool can access the pull request and then add the comment, right? So again, this is taken from the official documentation. You can try it out. Right. So simply configure this GitHub action in your repository, and then if it's a Terraform repository, and then you have some Terraform template, you make a change, you create a pull request. It will scan the pull request and add the comment in the pull request. Okay, this is failing
Sorry, though.
likewise. Yeah.
Sorry, one question. So, if you're going to do it on Azure, is it the similar way of generating the pet token and integrating on the tool that you're saying here right now? The
Yes,
similar
so
way that you
basically,
do?
yes. So if it is GitHub, this is the way, right? So if it is Bitbucket, let's say you need to find the different way. So this is not depending on the cloud provider. This is GitHub's thing. right? So because the tool needs to add the comment into the GitHub pull request. So regardless the cloud provider, Azure, GCP or whatever, this GitHub action is same. So basically it's a permission for the tool to add the comment in the PR, right? So not the provider doesn't really matter, okay? Right, so what I did was, the same code I had previously, I used it, made a small change, send the pull request to my main branch from that vulnerable branch. Now you can see here, the tool added comments here. You can see here. Previously, I had to go into the workflow, the pipeline, and I identify what failed. Now here, this is really is very user friendly. I don't need to go into the pipeline and see it's fail. I can read the comments in the pull request itself, right? So even let's say in an organization, when let's say people review the pull request, they would add the comments, right? Similar to that, now the tool is adding the comment and telling you this line has a problem. And then the best thing is it gives the recommendations also, like how to fix it, the official documentation, so you can read it and then fix it. So next time the pull request get modified, this will be gone, right? So again, this is TFSec tool. It's PR commenter plugin, right? So this is another good plugin that you can use that scans the Terraform code and tells you what's failing and all. All these are freely available out there. Right, now you can see here what's failing, and then the other thing is I can still merge this pull request. So in the pull request, sorry, in the GitHub action, you can add further configuration to prevent somebody merging a pull request uh, if let's say high critical vulnerabilities are there. So these there are more configuration that you can add to prevent somebody merging a vulnerable code as well, depending on your company policies. Likewise, so in that case you can suppress it so the tool would not complain again, and then it's all good, then you merge it. So all these additional configurations are there, but here I'm using the very basic configuration from the official documentation itself, right? Okay. Right, so I showed you two different tools, TFSec and Checkoff tool, and then TFSec has two plugins, one that scans the code and maybe fails the pipeline, building pipeline, and then the other one is scanning the code and adding a comment in the pull request, right? And then you can customize this, right? So let's say if you want these these failures to be alerted, you need to send an email, or you need to integrate these alerts with a third party monitoring platform. You can write your own GitHub action to export these vulnerabilities in some format. It can be JSON object likewise, and then process it and then push it to your monitoring platform tools, right? So everything is possible, right? Cool. So now let's go into the slide deck. Okay, so we talked about the different tools out there for performing infrastructure as code scanning. Basically, it performs static code analysis. And then compliance checks also. Now I showed you these tools themselves has their own recommendations. Like for AWS, different resources are there, EC2, and all these are our recommendations. Likewise, so you can read them, and then these different tools are having their own policies, right? And then so it's good to use. So it's good to have multiple tools also integrated, because one tool does not cover everything, but then having multiple tools have some overlapping, but then still good to cover additional configuration or checks as well, right? Okay, and then now all these things, I still did not create the infrastructure, right? So basically I wrote the code to create the infrastructure, but I did not get it executed, right? So you can perform all these checks before you actually provision the infrastructure. That's a good thing, right? And then once everything is good, then you can trigger it maybe through Terraform cloud. Then you can through your workspace, you can deploy these changes to your cloud. Okay, now there are some questions. Okay, if anybody is missing, I think this is recorded, so you can get the recording and then watch it, right? And then how it is assured that such third-party tools are not biased towards a particular cloud provider and how secure are such tools? Is there any other body that validates the authenticity and accuracy of such tools? No. Right. So yes, so it can be biased. So basically, this is the thing. Now, so if you take a cloud provider like AWS, so these tools have so many different policies for AWS. If you take Bridge Crew tool, checkoff tool, they have for just for AWS, they have 350 security policies, right? Checks. Um, but for GCP, they have around 100. So there are so the thing is um, some like depending on the cloud provider as well. For example, now if you take AWS, they have so many different services. Like I think nearly 300 different services are there on Amazon AWS, right? So EC2, Kubernetes, ECS, ECR, all these different services are there, right? But when if you compare AWS with GCP, now GCP would not have that many services out there, right? They have some, but then not very feature rich like that. And also there can be limitations like what you can do with GCP. Like let's say if you just take how you create the users, right? So in AWS you can create an IAM user that can have access key and secret, and the same user can have console access as well. You can control it. If you take how you do the same thing on GCP, you may need to create a service account there and then configure it likewise. So they have their own differences, right? So depending on that also, these what the tools can do would be different. And then yes, there can be scenarios where they are biased, like depending on like uh, who's funding this. Like some anyway, these are like the tools I showed you, like those are like paid tools, but we are using the free versions of them. And then they also keep modifying these tools because the same question can be there for everybody, right? So because now let's say which tool to purchase or which tool to use. For example, now let's say Bridge Crew would try to market their tool over Aqua Security marketing their tool, right? So whoever does better, like there's a high chance of winning the market, right? So they take all these efforts to improve the tools as well, right? So it's very active, like and since these are open source also, it's very active. So the rules engine is open source, right? Not the graphical GUI and all, right? So these tools have their own GUI platforms, which only comes with the paid version. But then free version, the rules engine, the scan and all, it's publicly available. So that if you have a doubt whether, let's say, they are doing something suspicious, right? You can go and check the code even, right? Cool. And then yeah, how do we ensure these tools are secure? Good question. That's where the SOC 2 kind of a certification comes in. So if you have trust issues with a certain vendor, now this is a vendor to your organization, you can simply, now it should be publicly available. You can get the SOC 2 report of Bridge Crew or Aqua Security. So that defines like how this data processing is happening, how they are, whether they are sharing data with third parties and all. So that's defined there, right? So if they are SOC 2 compliant, and then you can get the compliance report and check how they are handling the data safety and all these things. So that way, like like what they are doing, how they are handling, whether they have all the best practices followed in their organization, right? Otherwise, let's say you simply take a tool, and then what if this tool is getting all your internal repositories code and then uploading somewhere, right? That's not good. So that's where these two kind of things come into the picture. Cool. Yeah, if you have any questions, pause them. Anyway, I'll move on. Right now, so everything what we discussed so far, it is before you actually create the infrastructure, right? So you write the code and then you fix the vulnerabilities, potential weaknesses in the infrastructure, and then you, if everything is good, now you can push the changes to your cloud infrastructure where the resources are actually getting created, right? Now, previous it was just configuration. Now, let's say you did that part. Now you have a running cloud environment or infrastructure, right? You have EC2 instances, you have security groups created, right? Now let's see, when you have a running infrastructure, what are the tools that we can use and what are the different compliance checks out there so you can audit your cloud infrastructure, right? So first I'll show you the different compliance checks out there. So mainly we can use CIS benchmark. So CIS is Center for Information Security. There are governing bodies like CIS, NSA, likewise. So CIS is a commonly popular or well-known governing body in this security domain. So they have different security standards, right? For Amazon, like I just took Amazon, but then they have their own policies or benchmarks for GCP and Azure, right? So here I took, they have three different benchmarks or standards for just for Amazon. So I have downloaded them here. So it's again freely available. You can just Google CIS benchmark AWS. You can go to the downloads page of CIS website and then download them, these policies, right? Now you can see here, this is the policy for CIS Amazon Web Services Foundations benchmark. This is one, and then this is another one, CIS Amazon Web Services 3-tier web benchmark. And then they have another one, CIS AWS End User Compute Services benchmark, right? So depending on the user, now this end user is like the users who log into your AWS console. What are the different checks that you need to have um, for auditing the environment, right? Now you can go all the way to the end of this. Now this document tells you like how you can check this configuration. Also, you can log into this infra page and go to this page like that. So it tells you like how to audit it. And then if you go all the way until the end in the appendix section, they have the checklist, right? So let me quickly pull the checklist. You can see here. So let's say if an auditor comes, this is what they need to do. Um, they, let's say, ensure administrators of workspaces is defined using IAM, right? And in every control, you can see something called automated and manual, right? So automated is, there's a tool out there. The tool can automatically check this. So basically, what how the tools work is, so the tool gets connected to now this is a new area, not like Terraform, right? So Terraform, it didn't get connected to any environment, it just scan your code, right? Now this is a different concept now. So let's say we need to have a tool. The tool gets connected to your cloud environment, reads all the metadata of your resources, let's say security groups, users, EC2 instances or virtual machines, all the metadata of the all the infrastructure environment. They read it, check against their policies or security controls, and gives you a report, right? So if a tool can automatically find it out, you can see here this says automated. If it is something that you have to manually check, it says manual here, right? Okay, so this is what an auditor would be doing. They come tick tick tick. They might be either manually checking this, which would take a lot of time, because in some organization, they have different regions also, right? So imagine you have multiple regions, let's say Sydney region, Mumbai region, all the Jakarta, North Virginia, likewise. So let's say imagine you check an auditor getting checking different regions and finding out the different resources out there, right? That's not really practical, right? So that is why we definitely need to have tools. So whatever the tool can audit, we use tools to do that, and then whatever the tool cannot audit, we still need to do that manually, right? So I'm not going into details what these security checks are. Like maybe I'll either share these links for you to download, or else like you can read and understand. Basically, let's see, if you don't know what the security control is, it's well explained in this document itself what that control is, right? So similar to this, like so the for AWS, so that previous document was for the end users management. Now this one is for more for the infrastructure, right? So all these different controls that we need to do have. See, for networking, ensure no network access control list allow ingress from this is like any IP to remote server administration ports, right? Likewise, so they explain all the best practices. The auditor tick 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 tick. At the end, they find out, okay, what's compliant, what's not compliant. If something is not compliant, then the administrator has to justify whether it was mistakenly done and yes, we are fixing it, or else no, this is something we need to do. For example, there can be an EC2 instance that really needs to have public traffic coming in, right? So that way, you have the any IP whitelisted, right? Likewise, so you have to justify otherwise, right? Okay, so now these are the policies. So basically, these are the policies from CIS, Center for Internet Security. Similar to that, these probably NSA would be having their own guidelines. NIST would be having their own guidelines. Again, like it's not really good to depend on one single guideline. It's good if you can use multiple, right? So now I'll show you. So it's a very difficult job for an auditor to manually check all these things. That's where the tools come into the picture, right? So I'll show you some of the tools out there that you can use. You can use for automatically performing these scans, right? Okay, 1 second. Yeah, okay. So I introduce you the different compliance checks out there, especially from CIS benchmark. You can refer to others from NIST or NSA as well, right? Now let's take a look at the different tools out there that gets connected to your cloud infrastructure, Azure, AWS, or GCP, reads the infrastructure metadata, tells you what's passing, what's failing, what you need to fix, right? Okay, so let me. I have pre-recorded the demo. I'll show you, and then I have some trial versions also for these tools. I'll demonstrate that as well. Right. Okay, first one is previously I showed you the bridge crew, the checkoff tool by bridge crew, right? Now bridge crew has another tool called bridge crew CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management tool, which is not free. So I've got the trial is valid for 14 days. So you can evaluate it, right? And then you can see here, you can connect your AWS cloud, Azure, Google Cloud or Kubernetes workloads here, or you can connect other platforms as well. So integration, different connectors are there for you to integrate these one, right? Now, here I'm going to show you how easy it is for you to integrate this kind of a tool to your cloud infrastructure that would scan the cloud infrastructure and tell you what problems are there, right? Now you can see here two options are there in this tool: AWS read access stack and then AWS remediation stack, right? So the read access stack is obviously explained by itself. That is, let's say if you are using this, basically what this does is it's running its own cloud formation template that's creating an IAM role that gives this tool the read-only permission to your entire organization or the environment or the account. The tool can read the metadata of all the resources and checks against its source policies and tell you what's passing, what's failing. That's the read access. And then remediation stack keys. If you follow that, what happens is that's not read only. The tool will create an IAM role that would have more permissions to modify your infrastructure. And then if something is failing, you have an auto fix here, like from the dashboard itself. You can, let's say, click a button, the tool will go and modify. For example, let's say EC2 EBS volume encryption, you haven't enabled that. Now it's that security control is failing. Now you, in the dashboard, let's say you click a button, the tool will go and enable the modify the instance. The running instance will be modified by the tool, right? So that's the remediation stack, right? So in this example, I'm just going with the read access stack. Let me proceed. Just you need to click next. Right. So, and then in the same browser, you need to have logged into your Amazon account so that it directly goes there and then executes the cloud formation stack and create the particular resource IAM role that can read the resources. Right. So it's creating the stack just in a minute. It will be done. Just creating the IAM role, and then the bridge crew tool.
Meantime, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tyler, to jump in. So,
Yeah.
meantime, can you explain what kind of role that we have to give for this read stack and the remediation if you want to do the changes?
Yeah.
Is
We
it a
can check it.
contributor kind of?
Yeah, we can check it. Anyway, it's the minimum set. Read only. It's for all the resources. It's read only. Writing, I'm not sure whether it's what's the level of access, but we can check it. Like I have an environment that's this configured. We'll check it. Right. Cool. Right now, if you want, you can customize also. Like this is not the only way to run it. If you want, you can create your own IAM role with specific set of permissions and then still link it with the tool. That is also possible, right? Now here I'm just using the default option. So the now the role is IAM role is created, and then now the tool should be able to read my infrastructure. That it shows you the template also that it's executed. Yes, you can go to the template here. Let me quickly, yeah, you can go to the CloudFormation template here and see what are the permissions granted when it's creating the IAM role, right? That's an easy way to identify what the role, the level of access that this grants for the newly created role, right? Cool. Yeah, so now let me just fast forward. Okay, now this simply can read your metadata in the infrastructure and then check, show you what's passing, what's failing. So I have a trial. I'll just show that to you instead of just playing this. Let me quickly bring it up here. Yeah. Cool. Now this is a trial I just activated today, and then I scanned a test environment. Now you can see here. Now this not needs to be continuously done, right? Because let's say, so you can program it like every 1 hour time. This needs to be scanning your infrastructure. That is configurable. How frequently this tool needs to scan your cloud environment, it's configurable. Whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, monthly, likewise, because depending on how frequently you are doing the deployments or changes, right? But then what you have to remember is, let's say you do bi-weekly releases, but then you enable the tool to scan the infrastructure weekly, but you still have a 1 week period where your infrastructure can be vulnerable, right? So best thing is like at least enable it to run hourly, so that the window that somebody makes a mistake or changes something and it's getting alerted or detected, the window of that vulnerability period is like 1 hour in that case, right? So you can configure it. Now I'll just show you. So this basically scan my cloud infrastructure. It tells me 39 policies failed, 16 different policies passed. I did not suppress anything. Like now let's say it tells me there are 39 problems. Now I can, if something is justifiable, I can suppress it so that it's not getting reported again and again, right? And it shows me how many resources are there in my infrastructure. There are 281 resources, and then different benchmarks. So I already showed you what CIS benchmark. Is it here? No, it's not there. But others like ISO 27001, SOC 2, PCI DSS, different versions. So these are the frameworks that um, Bridge Crew is directly supporting. But then m- I think most of the automated controls in CIS benchmark, it's already covered by Bridge Crew tool, right? And the other thing is, now again, this is publicly available information. The Bridge Crew website has the policies that the tool is checking, right? Now this is for cloud security posture management. You can see here all the different policies out there. Now checkoff tool by the same Bridge Crew. Checkoff tool also covers some of the controls out there from this, right? Because pretty much like that's before infrastructure provisioning. Now this is after provisioning at the runtime, right? And then the tools, you can see here, these are the AWS policies, and then they have policies for Azure, they have policies for Google Cloud. Likewise, they cover multiple different cloud environment. Now I'll just show you some of the policies, like let's say IAM, identity and access management. Like what's the first policy? AWS account root user is used. Ensure using AWS account root user is avoided. So you need to avoid using the root user. And then ensure MFA is enabled for all IAM users with a console password, right? So now IAM users can either have a console password, console access, or access to an IAM key and secret, right? Programmatic access, right? So if a user IAM, if an IAM user is having console access, they must have multi-factor authentication enabled, right? So sorry, this shows you like gives you information like how this is done. If you want to do it, like different commands are there. And then if it's possible to be done through Terraform, like this would be giving Terraform related code samples as well. Right. So now, so these are the policies available. Like I think there are like more than 350 controls, security policies just for AWS. And now let's quickly go through this tool, right? So these are the different checks that it failed, and then let me see. Incidents. Do I have incident? Like ensure IAM policy documents do not allow asterisk or like all resources as a statement of action. Right. So different controls are there. You can see the details, and then uh, let me see if I can go to the resource inventory. Right. So how many resources are there? What are those resources? Now this is one thing you need to have, like for ISO 27001 certification, you need to have a resource inventory, like inventory access. You need to know what are the different asset inventory should be maintained. So now you can see here different instances. Let's say this is an EC2 instance. In the details you can see here network access is public, and then a security group is publicly open, and then what is the availability zone, like the region, whether different parameters are enabled, likewise different subnets that you have configured. So everything is visible here, all the metadata, right? And then the other thing is over time you can monitor this also. I think there should be some graph somewhere, like over time. For example, let's say in the first scan you have these vulnerabilities, now you fix it, it will show you the difference. Okay, yesterday you had this vulnerability, now it's fixed, likewise, right? Now this bridge crew is just one tool, and then I'll show you another tool that's called as Horangi Warden. There are multiple tools out there. So this is another tool called Horangi. Now, Horangi is a company, and then they have a tool called Horangi Warden. Now this is again, I'm having a trial, but the trial is expired. So I think that they give the trial for 1 month period. A bridge crew only gives for 2 weeks. You can see here at that time where I had the trial, I scanned one environment, AWS environment. It shows me like over time how many open issues were there, right? You can see here it's constant, like every hour it is scanning, and then it shows how many issues are there, right? Sometimes let's say you delete resources. Now you can see here this particular day only 176 issues were there, likewise, and then how many issues are open. So all these statistics can be there, and then you can see the compliance also, right? No, I told you, I'm not sure if it would work. Okay, I'm logged out. Oh, that's fine. See, let me see if it's shown. Yeah, let's see, these are different benchmark. For example, I showed you the CIS benchmark, right? See here, CIS AWS benchmark. You can select the standard, and now it shows you what are the controls failing, what are the controls passing, right? So I showed you the CIS benchmark PDF files, right? The documents. Now, the automated controls, the tool can automatically read your infrastructure and tell you this is passing, this is failing. See, I'll go through some. For example, it shows identity and access management. The root account has unrestricted access to all resources, right? Okay, that's passing, so it's not an issue, right? But then this one is failing. IAM password policies can prevent the reuse of a given password by the same user, right? So I haven't added that. So it's a control that's failing, right? So likewise, and it shows you in the CIS benchmark in which section this is discussed. You can see here section 1.1 in that document. This control is there, right? And then you can simply export a report from this one, a compliance report, to maybe submit to your management how compliant you are, or maybe let's say if you're going through an audit, you can export the report and give it to your auditor so they can, either get that checklist done, or else like it's anyway good to have these tools integrated, so the auditors would be satisfied. Okay, you have all these tools in place, and then you need to have proper monitoring also. Just because the tool is reporting, now if somebody is constantly checking these and then not fixing it, no point, right? And then the other thing is you need to consider the cost, right? So bridge crew, the cost per resource is around 60 USD per year, right? So how many resources I had? Like 281 just in this developer environment. So you need to multiply it by 60 USD to get the bill for 1 year. So it's costly. right? And then and again, I'm not sure, like that's the cost. Like we got some quotation sometimes back. It might change depending on the organization and all. Horangi Warden again, I don't know what the cost, but then it's not a free tool, right? So when you have nice looking dashboards and all, those are like costly, obviously, because they need to keep developing, right? Okay, now let's quickly take a look at a free tool that's out there that does similar thing, right? That's okay. Another tool is this Aqua Security, like the company that developed the TFSec tool. So Aqua Security company, they have something called Aqua Security CSPM. So this is, I again had the trial, again this is expired, which does the similar thing, right? All these tools behave in the same manner. So what you're seeing now is the Aqua Security CSPM, and then if I go to, I'll show you, and they cover their own set of different policies. Let me see. 1 second. Okay, I'm logged out. Just give me a second. I'll quickly log in. Okay. Likewise, so what I wanted to show you is like there are multiple tools out there that does similar jobs. So you have to find out which tool so it's your requirements, right? And then they have their own policies. So I showed you the bridge crew documentation, like 350 different controls are there just for AWS. Now you can see here, this is Aqua Security CSPM tool, and these are their own policies. Now you can see here for AWS, cloud trail bucket delete policy must be there. It's a medium severity issue. Likewise, all these policies are there, right? Right, and then if you can simply get your cloud infrastructure scanned using this kind of a tool that would tell you what's passing, what's failing. So they use different frameworks like CIS benchmark, NIST, likewise, right? Okay, now I'm going to show you a free tool out there that has somewhat good coverage. So that is the again Aqua Security, the Cloudsploit. So basically, the Cloudsploit is the free tool. I mean, open source version of this one, Aqua Security CSPM tool. The free version is um, this Cloudsploit tool, right? So only difference is Cloudsploit doesn't have a GUI dashboard, whereas the paid version has a dashboard, right? So now I'll quickly show you a demo how we can run this. All the documentation is out there. So if it is IAM, sorry, AWS, you need to create an IAM user with read-only permission for all the resources, put into your in the config file, and then run the tool, right? You need to have the AWS key and secret for that IAM user, and then run the tool. So I'll quickly show you running the tool. Right. So just fast forward. I have a pre-recorded demo, so you can get the open source, the GitHub repository, build the tool, and then just run it. So it has a Docker version also. You can run a container, or else it has a CLI also. I think it's a Node.js application. You can run the CLI application that would scan your infrastructure, right? Okay, now here I have created the config file, config.js. That configuration file has the credentials, the AWS key and secret. If it is GCP, you need to create a service account and then go download the key, the JSON file, and put into the config likewise. And then you run the tool. So this is a command line tool, Cloudsploit, the free version of Access Security CSPM tool. Now you can see here it needs to read all the resources metadata on your cloud environment, and then after some time it will show you the results, right? Let me fast forward and pause it. You can see here the scan is complete. Now if you don't specify the output format, it will print the vulnerabilities in the terminal itself. If not, you can define the output, whether you need to get a JSON file or a CSV file, so that all this report would come in CSV or JSON or whatever that format, right? And then now one drawback of the free version is it doesn't have a nice looking dashboard. So you have to have your own other tools to get the report and then process it and then manage the vulnerabilities over time, right? That's a drawback of the free tools, right? Some of the free tools. But the good thing is OWASP, Open web application security project, OWASP has a tool called Defect Dojo. So again, it's a free tool. Defect Dojo is a vulnerability management platform. So what you are seeing here is their GitHub repository. So Defect Dojo, it's open source. You can get it's available as a Docker image. So you get the image, you customize it, you can run it, host it on your own. And then so basically this has all the dashboards you need to manage the vulnerabilities, right? So the tools out there like CloudSprite, the scan report, security scan report, you can download in whatever the compatible format like JSON or whatever, and then import it to Defect Dojo. So this is a free tool. So if you're worried about the cost, you can use this platform, use all the free tools out there, which does, even though it doesn't have a GUI, you can use this platform as the GUI, right? So I'll just keep some of these and quickly show you how this is working. Okay, now you can see I'm going to register a product here, and then okay, then I'm going to import a security scan report. Now you can see here all the different tools that this software is supporting, like Acunetics, Aquascan, different tools out there. Like the other tools that I showed you, like TFSec, Checkoff, um, as you asked, like Vera code, check marks, all these reports are supported in this platform. You can simply see here the check marks and all these tools, the reports coming from various different security scanning tools, you can get the report and import it here. So you can see here CloudSplite scan. And the other good thing is this is a free tool, open source. If any security tool that you are using, it's not supported by this one, you can write a plugin, right? So we have written some plugins for this. It's just a Python file that you need to write to process your JSON or CSV file and import it to the this platform, right? So it's very simple, and you can see all the different tools that this guy supports. The reports coming from all these tools, you can simply import it to the tool and manage it, right? So once you import, I'll show you how it looks like. Right, you can see here, I just imported the CloudSplite scan result. You can see here the vulnerabilities: open remote desktop protocol, open SSH ports, VPC flag logs not enabled, likewise. And then you can export the reports also from here. Let's say the executive management need an executive report, summary report. You can export it. How many open issues are there? How many are critical? How many are medium? Likewise, export a report and submit. And then this supports tools like Jira. So you can simply create a Jira ticket through this platform, right? So it has connectors also for other project management tools like Jira. And over time you can manage it. Like, so you can suppress the issues, you can add comments, you can close the issues. Like you can see here how many issues are there. Now this is useful like when you don't have budget to use for a paid CSPM tool. You can use this kind of a platform along with CloudSplite kind of free tools that scans the code, scans your cloud infrastructure, gives you a report, then you import the report. And then you don't need to manually do this. OWASP Defect Dojo has an API. You simply get the JSON file from CloudSplite, call the API, and push it to the Defect Dojo, right? With few customers, we have done that integration where we have a cron job running every 1 hour time, performs the CloudSplite scan on your cloud infrastructure, get the JSON file, call the Defect Dojo API, and push the results, right? So it's open source, easily configurable. You can just get all these tools and then put it in your CI/CD pipelines and get help to secure your infrastructure, right? And then it shows your different zones. For example, let's say in the previous scan, like you had some vulnerabilities open, now you have closed them. So it would show you like the difference. Now these are closed, likewise, right? Okay, and then now let's move on. I hope you got the idea, right? So you have a running cloud infrastructure. It has so many resources created, and then Bridge Crew or any tool like that constantly, like periodically scans the infrastructure, the metadata, checks against their own set of policies, and whatever the policy is violated, it shows you here. and then you can investigate further what the vulnerability is and then get it fixed, right? And then you can get a compliance report likewise, right?
So I got a question. Across all of the
Yeah.
resource groups, it will be scanned for like if you have created any web applications, VMs, then databases across all of the environment, it will be scanning and give you the
Yes.
output.
Yeah, so
Okay.
exactly, yes. So it's so the entire account, your AWS account, it can scan, right? And also if you have multiple accounts, like you can switch also. For example, let's say some organizations, they have a they use these organizational units. So they have a management account, the root account, and then to the root account you plug your other let's say non-prod or the other different departments. Let's say different departments have their own AWS accounts, like the sub accounts. So you can configure it like to switch it. Like let's say it scans one infrastructure, gets the report, and then goes to the other account, use a different set of IAM keys. Likewise, you can program it easily, like to switch between the accounts and do it. But then if you take one single account, it can scan all the resources out there. Uh, in case if you're worried about the tool having read access to certain resources, you can control it. Let's say you whatever the IAM role that it created, you simply need to remove the read-only access from all the resources to a specific set of give specific set of resources, so the tool can only check that subset of resources from your cloud, right? So that's doable, right? Okay, now the other another, when it comes to the security, now you saw the pre-checks like the from the Terraform and all, like how you do it before you provision the infrastructure, and this is for the running infrastructure, how you um, use the tools to identify the vulnerabilities on your running infrastructure, right? And then now this does not go into the different resources, like let's say databases or the EC virtual machines or the Kubernetes containers, whatever, right? It just checks the metadata, right? Now if you are worried, let's say you have an EC2 instance, it is running an application. Now this does not do anything about the application, right? So this is checking the metadata of the EC2 instance, right? So for the others, like you need to have different tools to go into the cluster or the VM and do the certain checks, right? Maybe in a future session we can cover them as well. For example, if you take an operating system like Ubuntu, you can do an host assessment, right? So Ubuntu Security Center has a tool called Cis Audit. It's a CLI tool. You can install it in the VM. And then run it. It will again, it's compliant with CIS benchmark of Ubuntu, whatever the version, and then checks tells you these controls are passing or failing. Likewise, so depending on what you need to test, you need to use the right tools. Again, like you must use the tools nowadays, because doing all these things manually doesn't really work, right? Okay, and then another important thing when comes to cloud security is the cost, right? So everything that you have cloud, like you need to pay the bill unless it's a free resource, right? Free tier eligible resource, right? So the cloud cost management is really important, right? So you may have different regions, like people from your development team, let's say they have access, like they go to different regions, or by default it selects the, let's say, North Virginia, US, Ohio, whatever. They have created some test resources and they never figure it out. It keeps running, right? And now you're getting billed for that, right? So for security, that also can happen. So you need to constantly monitor the bill loss, right? Again, for checking the cost on the cloud, like again, you better use tools out there, because practically, like, it's not possible to what keep checking the cloud bill, right? For that also, there are tools. I'm not sure about the free tools out there, but I'll show you a paid tool. So there's one tool called Cloud Checker. Let me quickly bring it up. Okay. Right. Okay. Right now this is the Cloud Checker tool. So this is a really good cost management or monitoring tool. So you can link your, let's say if you have multiple accounts, you can link anyway. The bill in AWS, the billing happens with the root account or the management account. So you can link your management account. It basically links all the sub accounts as well, and then it shows you like what your monthly bill is, like daily costs, and then resource wise cost. Now this is uh, Amazon Connect, cloud, like different resource wise cost is shown, cost by the different services and all. So this is a good one. And then another one is, now you can switch to this let's say best practices. Now this tool, one thing is this covers somewhat the what the bridge crew and then aqua security or harangi warden does, the cloud security posture management recommendations. Now you can see here how many security issues are there. 55 security issues are there. Contact details on AWS accounts are not up to date. Contact information not registered. EC2 instances with embedded credentials are there. IAM password policy disabled. Likewise, all these security issues are shown, right? High, critical, medium, low, severe issues. Like, oh, these are the policies that's passing, right? These are the good things, not the bad things, right? These are the bad things, right? Okay. What's really important about this tool is the cost optimization part. Now you can see here cost. Two issues are there. If I expand this one, now this is telling me EC2 reserved instance purchase recommendations, right? Now let's say if you have long running resources like EC2 instances where you keep running it for years, right? What you can simply do is you can purchase reserved instance with no upfront cost. So you don't need to pay anything. You just purchase a resource, purchase the reserved instance with no upfront cost. So it's going to reduce your monthly bill. You can see here there's one, let me see, CE5 extra large EC2 instance running in the Sydney region. Um, and then monthly cost is 160. Demand monthly cost is $162. Monthly savings can be $113. Total savings can be yearly. I think this is yearly, can be $774. Likewise, so it shows you the tips that you can follow for reducing the monthly cost, right? And then the other thing is, let's say if it shows, now let's say it shows you this resource and you don't need that, right? That's an isolated resource hanging there, which you forgot to delete it, right? That also can happen. So you can monitor them. And then if this is valid, let's say you know that this resource would be there for another year, 2 or 3, depending on that, you can go to the Amazon console and purchase the reserved instances with no upfront cost. So you significantly reduce the cost, right? So that's another good thing with the best practices and following the best practices. And then it shows you like, see, possible monthly savings can be $308. Potential spot, we don't have spots instances this in this account. Likewise, so you can see the recommendations, and then if you actually purchase these reserved instances, you can save oh, this is monthly. See, monthly you can save this much, right? So for all the 6 different EC2 instances that we are having, right? So that's another good thing. So you can use these kind of tools to manage and monitor the cost and then follow their recommendations, because otherwise, let's say it's not really practical to see like how you can optimize these costs, right? And then it would highlight like on which day the cost happened. So now you can investigate what really happened on this particular date, why this cost is so high in that specific day. Likewise, and then per different service type also it shows the cost, right? Okay. There should be some free tools out there, but I haven't really searched on free tools. And then the other thing is some other partnerships would give you access to these kind of free tools. For example, there are companies where you can partner with, like you can become an Amazon technical partner likewise. And then there are vendors. They can, you just need to migrate your billing to these companies, and then they would give facilities like 30-day credit facility. And also they would give access to these kind of tools free of charge. Right, so these kind of options are there, especially with partnerships like Amazon Tech, becoming Amazon technical partners or likewise, right? Again, these tools support multiple cloud vendors also, not just AWS. Cool. And then right. So some of the like common things like basically this mainly applies to like let's say Terraform and all like you really need to keep monitoring the code and then get them fixed. Likewise, you really cannot wait because if the tools are telling you there's a vulnerability and you find out there's a vulnerability, but then you are too reluctant to fix it. Let's say you are worried whether the infrastructure would not be resilient when you push the new changes and all, but you really need to have a plan to push your changes continuously, right? And then you need to have tools integrated in different things like in your development phase, in your build pipeline, and then deployment, then the runtime security and all these tools should be there. And then some of the anti-patterns to avoid like overly customizing the patch selection or different OS level patches out there. Another good thing is like if you're going with cloud vendor, most of the time they take care of the underlying security patches for the infrastructure like operating systems and all. That's a good thing. And then exposing vulnerable systems to outside like and then you don't know which one to fix, like that's where you get the help from these tools, and then the tools will prioritize okay high critical vulnerabilities, medium severe vulnerabilities likewise. So depending on the severity of the issue you can prioritize them, get them fixed, or analyze and suppress okay this is something we don't need to fix, likewise suppress it so the tool won't be complaining you again, right? Cool. So I think I covered everything I wanted to discuss today. Yeah, we talked about different compliance standards out there like CIS benchmarks. We talked about the Terraform IAC code security tools out there for Terraform, TFSec, checkoff, likewise. And then we talked about cloud security posture management, like runtime security aspect of your infrastructure. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I mainly wanted to cover today. So if you have any questions, like we can go through them now. Even for CSPM, like it's good if you can use multiple tools also, like because there's no single tool out there that covers everything, right?
Chamil, just out of the curiosity, I just want to know, can we have access to the video to download? Because I need to have it as a reference. I need to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
to
sure,
once
sure. We
again
can do
because of
that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We are
Understanding
recording.
he's a proper SME. Yeah, understanding he's a good SME on subject, and also one request if you can share a way that we can network to each other, because down the lane we'll be also implementing these kind of tools in our platforms, and if we encounter any
Mhm.
issue, how we can coordinate to each other.
Yeah, definitely, Rukshan. Yeah, you can get my email from Madhurika and team, and then we'll try to like if the demand is there. I mean, like if you're interested, we can plan some more sessions as well. Like because see now the security is a very scattered area. Like so I covered very like few areas there like infrastructure as code security and then cloud security posture management. But then there are other security areas like for example Kubernetes container related security. Like then you have Docker images, like how the image scanning is happening, different tools to use. Again, Kubernetes is like the configuration related security and runtime related security. And then let's say you have virtual machines having different operating systems installed in that. How do you do a host assessment, host security assessment to make sure the operating system itself is secure, right? And then you might be having DevOps pipelines, maybe Jenkins servers, GitHub Actions, all these things. How you integrate various different tools into your pipelines for maybe performing static code analysis or software composition analysis, like we talked about JFrog and all. And then that's a whole different area how you manage the vulnerabilities with third-party components, right? And then dynamic security assessments, like let's say you have a web application, like what are the tools you use that can attack the application and give you a report, okay, you have these open vulnerabilities, likewise. So we'll try to maybe organize some more sessions in future, and then if you are looking for a specific area, keep Chamil and Madhurika informed on the areas, because we work with so many customers in various different areas Like if you are looking for a specific area, like we can definitely prepare and come and then do another session like this. It's very practical, like we use all these free paid tools and all, like we can share all the knowledge. Yeah.
And
Shalini,
coming
is there
to,
any way
yeah.
that is there any tool, such tool to do penetration testing on the production environment, or can we use the same tool for the same purpose?
Okay, Chamil, now it's never recommended to do a penetration testing on a production environment. Uh,
Sorry. I think all the environment actually before
yes,
moving to the yeah, production.
cool. Yeah, that also depends, right? Because now let's say some tools are out there, like let's say Cole's, Nessus kind of tools. So those tools, let's say, would have only the access to the public facing interfaces of your cloud, right? So that you can still use them to cover like what an end user would be, and like a hacker outside your network would be doing. You can use those tools, right? And then now let's say if you are talking about an internal environment, like let's say you have your own cluster, whatever, you can still host your EC2 instance, give access to your internal network, open all the ports and all IPs and all to that EC2. Then you can install the security tools in that EC2 instance and then run the security scanner in your internal cloud, right? So that way you can cover the internal network security as well, right? There are various tools that we use, again, like Nessus kind of tools. Like, see, some of the tools are not free. Like if you have access to a paid tool, that's good. Like some tools you can install an agent, and then the tool can get connected to the agent, and then the agent can do the scanning, right? Some tools are there. Likewise, sometimes like we can do manual penetration testing as well, like because the tools, like, again, like let's say there are tests to perform like as an authenticated user, a logged in user, and then a non-logged in user, or visitor, likewise. So you need to properly configure the tool with an active session or cookies or whatever to do the authenticated flow testing, right? Likewise, so various different aspects are there to cover. And then again, like various different standards are also out there. For example, OWASP has something called ASVES, OWASP Application Security Verification Standard, that gives a checklist to evaluate how mature your application is. That's mainly for web applications. Then, like other standards are, let's say, if you have an API, was top 10 API security, top 10 best practices are there, published in 2019. Likewise, so depending on that, and again, like if you are looking for mobile application security, like that's a whole different area, different tools are out there. So depending on that, what exactly is the requirement? The requirement can come from an auditor even, right? So now the auditors come on board and tell you must have these compliance. For example, if it's a fintech company, they have different requirements, right? Likewise, so it can be auditor that's pushing you to get all these things done, or else it might be coming from the organization itself. We as a company need to have a secure environment. We are ready to do that, and this is our budget. So depending on the budget and the timeline and the resources you are having, you can build the security team. You need to build that culture also in the organization, for the people to grow the competence, the skills and all required, and then over time they are comfortable with these tools and use them. Or else you can outsource. For example, nowadays I see a lot of demand in VC, so practice, virtual chief information security officer, VC, so practice. So many companies of security specialized organization are offering VC so as a service. So let's say you don't have a security team in the organization, or you do have, but you don't have that much expertise. So somebody can become your VC. So you purchase that service, they will take care of everything, the skill development, the assessments and all, making sure you are compliant. They will bring all these tools on board. So you have access to these, right? So various different thi- um, opportunities, and then out there how you can engage and how others can engage with you, right? So we can discuss. Yeah. So there's another question also, like at high level, what are the other challenges strategically faced by IT going to cloud from on-prem? On-prem to cloud, one thing can be definitely the cost, because you already have something running. Now you need to migrate this to cloud. Now cloud has an additional bill, right? That cost is one thing, and then you need to have right resources. For example, now we discuss like which cloud to pick, Azure or AWS or GCP, whatever, right? So you need to do your own resource and pick the right cloud provider for you. You need to then check the services that you want, whether the cloud provider is offering those services in the specific region that you want, whether the cloud provider offers those services in that region, and then whether you have the right skills in your team. Right? For example, you may have certified AWS professionals, but now you need to migrate to GCP. You don't have GCP professionals, right? Still, they can learn and get the things done, but then again, there can be a skill gap, right? And then the security comes like which tool to use with which infrastructure, what are the security standards out there. So those are also coming into the picture. And then now let's say uh, which service to use. For example, let's say you may need to store the data somewhere on cloud, and then the requirements may change. For example, this data needs to be accessed only once a month, or this is something to be accessed yearly, right? Then where you're going to store it, is it in an EBS volume or EFS or S3 bucket, even S3 bucket, which class to use likewise. So you need to have specific knowledge there also, evaluate the requirements and pick up the right service the cloud provider gives you that would be cost effective, right? Because let's say you are using EBS volume, compared to that S3 bucket is very cheap, right? So but then S3 bucket might be slow, but if you want to constantly keep accessing the data likewise, so you need to evaluate all the odds depending on the requirements and then pick the right technology, right? And then there can be scenarios like cloud to cloud migrations also. Let's say previously you had AWS, but now you need to migrate everything to GCP, right? So that also can happen. For example, let's say previously you had Azure, let's say compatible with Office 365. Now your company decides, let's say some merger comes now, every company is acquired by a parent company. They want you to migrate to Google Workspace, Google Managed Gmail and all. Now it's better supported in GCP. Now you want to migrate from Azure to GCP. There are tools out there like BitTitan, like you can simply connect all the accounts that does the migration and all. But again, like it's very complicated, like depending on the requirements, the organizational policies, the supportability and all. Cost is a major factor there. And then the other thing is the specialized skills that you require in terms of these strategies, right? Those are the main challenges actually when it comes to going from on-prem to cloud. Again, like security, right? Let's say it's a closed environment when it's on-prem. Only like limited people can access, but you put it now on cloud. You don't follow the best practices. Now it's publicly available, right? So security again, like it's a bigger challenge there. And then that's why all the skills are out there, the tools, the techniques are out there, but then you need to have the right people uh, to support you in this journey. Cool. Any other questions? And then sometimes like there are no tools also in some technology areas. For example, nowadays many companies are building mobile applications, especially fintech organizations. So they have options like React Native, because you write one code and now you can export it to iOS and Android, right? But now I've seen Dart and Flutter becoming increasingly popular, whereas they don't have a static code analysis tool. So you can bring Vera code or check marks, all the uh, leaders from Gartner Magic Quadrant who's doing static code analysis, but still no tool is out there for doing static code analysis on Dart and Flutter projects. Right? There are some tools for Sona Cube out, not for Sona Cloud. So Sona Cube is a free version. You can get the free plugins and install. For Sona Cube, Dart and Flutter one plugin is there, but then Sona Cube, Sona Cloud, it's a code quality checker mainly, not a very sophisticated security tool. Likewise, so these are also problem can be there, like there's no tool. So you need to sometimes manually do the things, right? So those are the challenges that you would be facing.
I'll do just a small question.
Mhm.
If you make or your I was
Rafi, I'm losing your voice. Madhurika, is it just me or
No, no, it's for everyone, I think. For me also, it's not clear.
Can you hear me now?
I think it's better now. Yes.
My question was regarding point again.
No, I think we lost you again.
Rafi,
Rafi,
it's
your voice is not
breaking.
clear. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's some problem with your connection, maybe.
Maybe you can post it in the
If
chat
yeah,
then.
you can. If it's something not long, you can just type it. We'll answer it.
It's okay, guys. It's okay. I think there's
Oh no,
something wrong.
it's better now. It's better now.
Oh, okay, fine. I off the Bluetooth. Right. So this firewall and the internal, let's say the defenses that you have, Tarindu,
Mhm.
when you go to cloud and if you even if you have such tools, how good are these testings as opposed to what you would have internally within your IT environment? I think my question was based on that, which was answered by you.
Mm, cool. Right now. So now you saw the tools are having a set of predefined policies. So what the tool simply does is getting the metadata from the cloud or the code, checking against the policies, right? Now, along with time, these tools are also getting modified. The rules are getting modified, right? But then especially for cloud, there are well architected frameworks, right? For example, AWS has well architected frameworks, so as GCP and Azure. So as architects, what cloud architects, what we need to be really doing is like getting familiar with all these best practices out there. Like we don't, let's say if we are doing the right thing, we don't need to worry about a tool, right? The tool will then check and tell you you have done the right thing, right? So what matters is like we getting that knowledge and then doing it right. Right? We are not worried about a tool. Validate tool is there to validate it, right? And then if the tool is not good enough and you make a mistake, that mistake would open up vulnerabilities in your cloud still, right? So what matters is like we understanding and we see in the bigger picture, like how the attacks can happen, like what are the different possibilities, right? Because like there can be like specific use cases like that that cannot be covered by a tool, right? So it's a very specific way of the way you are deploying, and also best thing is like we following all these well architected frameworks, knowing what's capable, what the cloud provide inherently supports, and what are the things that we can achieve by following the standard best practices, the deployment patterns and all, and then implementing it, right? So the tool is just to there for you to get the help to validate if you are still making a mistake. If the tool can identify, that's good. But then the real problem comes like you make a mistake and the tool is not good enough to detect that. That is where the real problem comes, right? So that's a problem that we really cannot solve. The only way is like we need to constantly like look into these, think differently, think out of the box, find out different other best practice that you can still follow, right? So there's no direct answer how we can do that. Like we need to keep thinking about that and then um, doing it.
Yeah, thanks, Tarindu. Thank you.
Tarindo, can you hear me?
Yeah.
One last question from me. So, in terms of getting quality checks done on a code, let's say if a code is having so much of while loops and if we want to get it optimized,
Mhm.
what kind of tool that you can recommend in the industry?
Okay, so that kind of, yeah, that's the basically the cyclomatic complexity. So I'm sure there's a control in Sona Cloud and Sona Cube. I've seen it like the cyclomatic complexity. It will tell you this is complex and all. And then I have used checkmarks tool. So it's a paid tool, very expensive. So checkmarks tool definitely has that. I've seen it and I've corrected like them. The cyclomatic complexity is reported by checkmarks and Sona Cloud. I've seen it tells you like where the problem is, like then you can look into it, then get it fixed, like make it more readable, less complex. You can do a dry run manually and then figure out, make it more optimized. So on a cloud, and then check marks I can recommend. I'm not sure Veracode. Suppose I haven't seen it. Probably you can check with the other thing is like with proprietary tools, there's very less documentation. But then if you have the tool, you can raise a support ticket and then they will help you. And the other thing is like these paid tools, especially for static code analysis, they have very good teams of people improving the code. So I have raised many supports ticket with checkmarks and Veracode. They are very helpful. And also shift left. Shift left is another static code analysis tool. So I've raised many support tickets with them, and then they are like there are so many researchers working their teams identifying different ways code can be improved. Even they can write something and release in the next version to help you out if you are coming up with a specific scenario where the tool is not currently supporting. So yeah, definitely checkmarks and Sona Cloud or Sona Cube support cyclomatics complexity.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
One second. Another problem with cyclomatic complexity is again with the recursion and all. Sometimes these static code analysis tools, let's say there's a function, and then this function is getting recursively invoked, right? Now let's say what the tool does is tool checks it then it goes, okay, I need to call this. So it tries to some tools, they try to simulate this code behavior, right? Because especially a tool like checkmarks that is telling you the code execution path. Because let's say, okay, you have a utility function, let's say that gets connected to a database in an insecure way, right? So that function itself is vulnerable, right? Now let's say there can be 10 different places where 10 different places are calling this vulnerable function, right? Let's say the function might be getting executed in a vulnerable manner depending on the parameters coming into the function, right? So if you want to address that scenario, like you have to check all the 10 different places who are calling this function, check the parameters they are sending and fix everything, right? Now, especially with the cyclomatics complexity and recursion, there are cases where the tool runs into an infinite tool trying to find out the execution path. It's getting exhausted. Let's say for hosting this kind of a tool, like let's say Veracode, they have a cloud, but checkmarks and all, like there's a version you can host it on your own, probably in an EC2 instance. Like you need to have so much memory and CPU allocated for running the tool. So recommended like at least 32 GB RAM with like 8 core CPUs just for running the tool. Like the good thing is you don't need to keep running the tool, the instance. You start the instance, run the scan, get the report, shut down the instance. That you can do to reduce the cost. But then especially with this case like the recursion and cyclomatic complexity, I have seen even the checkmarks tool like the best tool getting exhausted uh, trying to find the execution path. It just runs out the memory in that specific case. It doesn't stop because it tries to find out, okay, still need to, there can be an exit path. It doesn't have depending on the way the code is written, right? So I've seen that even in very good tools, but then they do support detecting that. That's code security. Like that's another different area, like which tool to use, how do you manually check and all. But yeah.
But then again, it's a downside of the product, right? If it cannot be identified, the proper function where the path.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. See, the tools, we cannot 100% rely on the tools. anyway, like let's say even the developers, they need to be going through different trainings to know how to write secure code and all. Like you can get help from different platforms like Secure Code Warrior, where you can sign up and then get all the trainings, and then OWASP has their own checklist cheat sheets how you write the secure code and all. Like if it is like Java, there's a very good book called Ironclad Java that gives so many recommendations on writing secure code likewise. So it ultimately it's developers responsibility to make sure they write the secure code, like because we simply cannot rely a tool to come and tell you, but you can get the help, but then it's developers responsibility, like making sure the code is secure, the code is optimized, readable, maintainable, and test coverage is there to make sure, let's say the developer leaves the company, the next somebody comes on board new, they try to change something and now a test case is passing, then this person figures out, okay, this is something I should not be changing likewise. So all these factors are to be considered, especially when it comes to code security. Cool. Any more questions?
I think silence says no more questions, Taradu. It's almost, I
Cool.
think, more than 2 hours, right? And Tarandu, thanks for the wonderful session. I would like to thank you on behalf of Sri Lankan IT Professional Association in UAE for your time and for your expert knowledge that you shared with us. And it's really valuable, and we really appreciate your time. I know it's early in the morning in your time and you should not sleep.
That's totally
So,
fine, Samil. Thanks for the invitation. Also, like I've known Madhurika from back then from WSO to work in the
okay.
security team, right? It's really good. Like so, it see, I didn't expect even this many crowd to attend, and it's really good to see everybody asking questions and all. Because see, I've done many sessions and all, nobody asks a question. Either they don't understand anything or I don't do it in a way they understand. Right. So this is really good. Like the you very actively asking questions and all. Some of the things are complex, but we'll try to maybe have some more sessions in future because now the security is like really, really important, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
many tools are there. It needs. It's not a complicated thing. It's just building that culture,
Correct.
having the right mindset. Okay, we as an organization we need to have people actively looking into these technologies, evaluating tools, or else at least outsourcing, bringing different people on board to help you out in this. It's not just at the end of the day ticking a checklist and then telling we are secure. No, because in a 0 day vulnerability or whatever, things can go severely drastically change, right? And it may damage your reputation of your
Correct.
organization, right? So we need to actively looking at, we mainly what matters is building that culture and the right mindset, understanding the importance of it. It's not I mean, of course there are factors like cost pulling you down from bringing all the good things, but then there are alternatives like free tools that I showed, still providing adequate coverage and all. It's just the culture that we need to grow in an organization to for people to understand the value of it, the need for it, and then go and implement it, and then even attend these kind of sessions, training sessions, and also to conduct to share knowledge and experience.
Yeah, correct. I agree with you, Taridu, because I think it should be like kind of best practices. So you need to, as long as you, I mean, follow the best practices, you don't need to worry
Yeah.
about the tools. You don't need to depend on the tools.
Yes.
So without we, I mean, depend on the tool, I think,
Mm,
as you suggest, it has to be done from the educational level where the developer get
mm,
trained well on how to write the secure piece of line of code. So
yeah.
once that is done, so then you don't need to depend on the in the tool. And even though you
Mm,
still use the tool, and
mm,
the effort and your workload will be, I mean, minimized. So I think this is
definitely.
where one place where we need to address.
Definitely. Because you can easily even fool a tool,
Correct.
Chamil, right?
Yes.
Because I have witnessed that by myself because there are scenarios. Let's say you are hired by a company, and because they have an audit coming on next month, you
you
find
get
out.
paid and you have somehow get the
Yes.
two
Yeah. So
tasks.
you find out, you know all the internal vulnerabilities. Now you know what the auditor would be doing. You just do everything possible to hide it. So the auditor cannot simply detect these things. You might be closing down these things just temporarily so that they can cannot penetrate into. Likewise, uh, because at the end of the day, it's not just even fooling them just to get the compliance report so you can run your business, right? What matters is like you doing the right thing all the time. If something is not secure, don't be afraid, like let the auditors fail you, so you convince your management somehow, you find the
And get
budget
it.
somehow, do the right thing.
Correct. I agree with you. Yeah. Anyway, thanks Madhurika for bringing this one and the CPD subcommittee. It's a wonderful session, and thank you so much, Madhurika and the CPD team. And anyway, maybe in future also we might invite you for some other sessions, depend on the feedback from our members, different topics. So anyway, let's
Yeah,
keep in touch. And for the future also, Tharidu, and since our members also will have time to time requirements on with related to these concerns, so cloud security concerns or whatever, so maybe they will be able to contact you in that case.
definitely, John.
All right, I think that's it for today. Mathurika, anything else you want to say? I think that's it, right? We are done. We don't
Yeah,
want
we
to
are done.
keep more, more with Thanudu anyway. So thanks for your time. I think you need to sleep now.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks all.
Tarantu. Thank you
Thank you
very
Yeah,
so
much.
much.
thank you so much, Tarun. Yeah,
Thanks all.
yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Tadu. I'm really impressed.
Right. See
Thanks
you
for your
all
time.
then.
See you.
Bye.